Hi, I'm Linda Quinlan.
I'm Ann Charles.
Then I must be Keith Ghostland, and this is all things LGBTQ. We are taping on Tuesday, September 8th. We tape in Montpelier, which we acknowledge is unceded Indigenous land. And now, hopefully, Linda has some headlines.
Well, as a matter of fact, I do. Richard Wiesenberg says in his op-ed piece in The Advocate that COVID has really done a job on personal finances of LGBTQ people. We'll have more about that. Pete Buttigieg joins the Biden team as part of his transition team. Texas Assistant AG is fired for anti-LGBT and other outrageous tweets. Nick Motes called trans people an abomination and women politicians the whores of Babylon. He also said that the ACLU should be used for target practice, and Black Lives Matter are activists and terrorists. So, but at least he was fired, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in Texas. A Little Escape into LGBTQ movie on Netflix. A former log cabin representative is on a mission to stop Trump. A Marine that killed a transgender woman to be released. Second judge blocks an effort to end LGBTQ healthcare protections. A federal judge in D.C. blocks Trump administration rule allowing anti-LGBTQ discrimination in healthcare. This is really good news because I love Star Trek. Star Trek Discovery cast its first ever trans and non-binary roles. Non-binary actor Blue Del Barrio and transgender actor Ian Alexander will be beaming up on October 15th, so mark your calendars. 2 men are charged with hate crimes. Elijah Lee started Soul magazine because he said he wanted to educate, empower, and inspire the Black LGBT community. After watching Brother Brother in 2004, a Randy Evans film, he decided to create space himself and launched Soul. So you can find that on online. A documentary and film series will be featured on TMC, Turner Movie Classics. Alex Morse has been mayor since 2002 after winning an election as an openly gay 22-year-old in a historically patriarchal manufacturing city. And then I have a long quote from Billy Graham's granddaughter. And I think that's about, oh, and I have a clip on a movie that's coming out. It's about these women who travel, or the LGBTQ people who travel across country and end up at a anti-gun rally in DC. It's a documentary, like they follow them cross country. And so anyway, that's it for me right now. How about you, Ann?
Well, Linda, I think you and I have overlapped.
Why?
Are you talking about the Philippines Duterte pardoning the U.S. Marine?
Yes, because he's a U.S. Marine.
Oh, and I did it because Duterte did it. So we've overlapped.
Okay. You can go right ahead if you want to.
It's one of my headlines.
Okay, then go ahead.
Okay, let's start with some news from Lebanon. I'd like to show you a picture now of Sandra Melhem, who is the proprietor of a club called Ego. And I have a story about, we remember the horrific explosion in Lebanon, and a gay district and another progressive district were decimated. So Sandra Melhem is helping the community rebuild. So I have a story about that. More coalition building. They are not alone. There's an LGBT plus March Against Fear on the German-Polish border. So the German LGBT community is expressing solidarity with the Polish LGBT community, and about 2,000 people marched along their border. Now I have a picture before you of Billy B. Bryan, who is the founder and president of Colors Cayman. And Colors Cayman continues the fight for legalization of same-sex marriage in the Cayman Islands. It was legalized by a judge. The appeals court overturned it. Then it's gone to a same-sex partnership bill has been passed by the local ruler there, but it's not marriage. So Cayman Colors with Billy B. Bryan at the head is fighting to change that. Indonesia police detained dozens in a raid on a Jakarta gay party. And I have a picture now before you of the 9 men who were arrested. They are accused of being the organizers of this party. Being gay is not illegal in Indonesia, although, as you can tell by this incident, harassment occurs regularly. In fact, homosexuality is not illegal, and it's the world's most populous Muslim nation. But police now have set up a special task force to investigate alleged homosexual activity. In February, members of the House of Representatives proposed a bill that would define homosexuality as deviant and require LGBT people to report to the authorities for rehabilitation. Of course, this has been denounced, but harassment continues. Speaking of difficulties for the LGBT community, Budapest Pride is blighted by far-right extremists. They had, in 2019, the Pride Center was broken into, and a rat was left in the bathroom. But this year, it is celebrating its 25th anniversary, and it was later because of the pandemic. But the festival was attacked by a group of 20 extremists who descended on the Pride offices. They're involved. This disruption is carried on by Budhazis, which is a right-wing disruptive group who are followers of Georgi Budhazi, who's a far-right nationalist politician, found guilty of terrorism offenses, including the petrol bombing of a gay bar. So they scaled the political opposition building this year, removing the rainbow flag, which I mentioned last time, that rainbow flags were removed from the embassies in Hungary. And Viktor Orban, the homophobic leader, said a lot of...
And Hungary is not part of the EU.
Correct. Like Poland and other parts of Central and Eastern Europe, they're increasingly dealing with societal rise of homophobic and intolerant sentiments as the difference between the right and the far right grows smaller. So that's bad news there. Good news, well, there's more good, let's take a turn to the good news. Queer swimmer Teresa Goh advocates for Singapore's LGBTQ community. And we have a picture now before you that I'd like you to look. She's posing with her bronze medal that she got from swimming in the Paralympics. Now she's come out as queer. She says Singapore has a ways to go, but that swimmers are coming out increasingly. Corporate sponsors are sponsoring pride events, so she's hopeful about the future. She was born with spina bifida. More good news. The Australian Capital Territory passes a ban on conversion therapy. And remember I told you last week that Queensland was the first territory to do it, but that they didn't ban it for faith institutions. But the Australian Capital Territory has. And it's, yes, it's really an exciting event. From early next year, anyone using the practices of conversion therapy would face up to 12 months in jail or a fine of $24,000, and it includes faith organizations. So, progress there. Now we have exciting news from Valencia, Spain, involving two penguin supermoms. Let's take a picture now, and I'll be able to talk more about them later. Their names are Electra and Viola.
Aww.
I heard a newscaster pronounce it viola, but that's the instrument, right? Viola is the penguin, a supermom. And I have a related story of interest about penguins that I'd like to share with you.
I saw a clip about gay lions.
Well, bring it in.
Oh, it was in Africa, though, I think.
Oh,
It's out of my territory.
well, you should have passed it on. Okay, so we talked about Duterte, and Linda's going to talk more about that story. Basically, he says, you know, people were opposed to this pardon, and a person says, you know, like with certain national resonances here, he's the president. He can pardon anybody he wants and do what he wants. So that was the rationale there.
I heard he wanted to get on the good side of Trump, which
Exactly.
is why he did it.
Exactly. Armed guards have been provided for a threatened lesbian couple in India, and they're both cops, and they fell in love, and their families, I mean, honor killings are, you know, occur all around Asia, and so they were being harassed by their family and getting death threats, so they asked the police to protect them, and the police has.
Good.
Nigerian lesbians have been blackmailed with nudes on a social media site. You know, they've been tracked down, raped, and then nude pictures have been taken of them, and they've been blackmailed. But Social Network is coming out against that, and they're getting visibility and some measure of protection, although social media is very tricky, as we know. And finally, bad news for a deplorable. A Ukrainian Orthodox Church patriarch
Oh, I read that.
who has blamed same-sex marriage for the COVID-19 epidemic.
He got it.
Has come down with it, yes.
Good.
And
Oh, I
he's
hate you.
91.
Should I say good? No, I won't.
I don't know, but he said, oh, shoot. Oh, here he is. He says one of the country's most influential religious figures, he said COVID was God's punishment for the sins of men and sinfulness of humanity. First of all, I mean same-sex marriage. The comments were condemned, of course, labeling his words very harmful. Such statements, activists and advocacy groups say, are very harmful because they could lead to increased attacks, aggression, discrimination, and acceptance of violence against certain groups.
I liked it better when the communists banned religion.
The World Health Organization says the equation of the pandemic to divine intervention fuels stigmatization and discrimination, as we may surmise, homophobia remains widespread in Ukraine, with same-sex marriages remaining illegal. So
All right.
there's that Ukrainian high priest. I wouldn't say it's his comeuppance, but what goes around comes around. I don't know.
Karma.
All right, that's enough
Okay.
from me. Keith.
So, if you're watching this show when it first airs on Saturday the 12th, and you have no plans for Sunday the 13th, from 5 to 6 p.m., you could either stream on CBS All Access or watch on WCAX Channel 3, or go on the Pride Center site and watch the Pride Stream Festival. Well, there will be speakers and entertainers, and if you're so inclined, you could go to the Higher Ground drive-in site in Essex, the Essex Junction Fair site, and there will be a live show happening in front of you, and then from 6 to 7 will be the Glam or Us drag show, and someone we know may be one of the MC hosts. And then following that
J-Lo.
is Out Here, which is a virtual speak out, Black Lives Matters, Indigenous people of color.
Good.
So,
That's Thursday.
no, that's
Sunday.
Sunday.
Sunday. Let me write that down.
I don't know where Linda's been or where she plans on going. But I kind of wonder what she was doing Thursday night when Professional Charles might have been part of a virtual discussion online
Yeah.
about disappearing women's space.
It hasn't come up yet.
It will by the time this airs,
Right.
which is why I said I don't know where you were on Thursday. And of note, Anne may be making a commitment on our interview show to go back and interview LGBTQ plus history before it disappears, such as the recent interview with Ava Weiss. And on our upcoming interview show, we're going to travel to Bennington, a part of the state where we haven't spent a whole lot of time. And Anne may be talking with Hunter O'Hanlon about the Stonewall Museum and Archive in Fort Lauderdale, and Linda, that poet, may be talking to another poet, James Cruz.
Yes.
So remember, the Saturday, we're not here telling you all the news. We're here interviewing people that you should be meeting.
Hunter O'Hanlon.
O'Hanlon.
All right.
Never try to
Did
spell things
anything.
out phonetically.
Yeah.
Also, when Anne interviewed Ava Weiss, they talked about the Wow Cafe in New York City. So this week's trivia question. Vermont had a Wow. Where was it? What was it? And might there have been a signature event associated with it? Also, keep in mind, it's not too late to send a message to HUD, public comment section, until September 25th about allowing shelters to refuse shelter to someone who is transgender based upon their gender identity. And what's important about this is if you write just a simple letter to them saying you oppose this policy, they have to take the time to formally answer all of them, and they cannot implement the policy until all of those responses have been sent. So, regarding HIV, a very disturbing development. 2 men south of France have both developed a treatment-resistant strain of HIV. And what is sort of distressing about this is that traditionally you might be resistant to a treatment. Both of these men who did not know each other but live in the same geographic region, which would indicate there is spread occurring, are resistant to all three
So
classifications
does that
of
mean it
retroviral.
mutated or something maybe? Yeah.
It means there's something that has happened that to which we need to be attentive. So, and then, as time allows, I'm going to talk about the legislature. Nothing about us without us, and how they finally heard that. And then I'm going to talk some about the upcoming election, our incumbent LGBTQ plus legislators, and encouraging news about the census.
I was going to ask you about the census. They're making it like over at the end of September, but it's usually over at the end of October. It's being fought. Do you know of anything?
Okay, well, I was
with
going to
that?
report on that later, but what's
Okay.
happened is there's a federal judge who has ruled that they cannot stop the count until after the federal appeals court hearing happens on September 17th. And Phil Scott was one of the people who was part of that suit, saying, no, this needs to be extended until October 31st.
And it usually is, isn't it?
Well, no. Everything got shifted relative to COVID, but it was very clear that the current federal administration was decreasing the amount of time with virtually no notice so that the remunerators, the people who were actually going door to door, couldn't count immigrant workers, new
Right.
Americans, the undocumented, because even though they cannot vote, they're part of the population
Right.
and they count toward the census.
Okay, just checking in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but now it's back to you.
now I have to be on.
Now
right?
you got to look at your notes.
All right. Well, 2 men were charged with a hate crime and an attack to attack 3 Los Angeles trans women. They were assaulted, robbed, and were called anti-trans insults. 2 men have been charged in this, and the transgender women were Jocelyn Flawless, Eden the Doll, and Jasleen White Rose. And they were attacked right on Hollywood Boulevard, and apparently they were waiting for an Uber to pick them up, and people stood around and kind of didn't do anything. And one of the men that attacked the women grabbed her purse. They all ran after, and they were beating up some more, and then the police finally came, but they did get them, the 2 men who assaulted them, so we'll keep you posted about what happens with that. And there's a documentary film series which will be featured on Turner Movie Classics, which celebrates women directors. The women make film features out directors and will offer a film school in which all the teachers are women. It's a 14-part documentary and film series, and it aims to give women behind the camera their due. And that should be pretty interesting.
That sounds really cool.
I know.
Yeah.
And let's see. A little escape to the movies on Netflix, LGBTQ movies. You might try Derry Girls, which is set in Ireland during the time of the Troubles. Schitt's is a Greek comedy. And it's a special about gay men living with cerebral palsy. Elite is a Spanish thriller, and Dear White People, and many, many more. So check out all your LGBTQ movies on Netflix.
We saw Dear White People.
We did. Mhm. And a former log cabin representative is on a mission to stop Trump. Sarah Longwell says, Trump threatens the GOP, but more importantly, democracy itself. Ms. Longwell is a longtime influential Republican operative and founder of Republican Voters Against Trump, and was the former chairperson of the Log Cabin Republicans. She left the organization in 2019. So.
I hope more of them see the light.
And a Marine that killed a transgender woman will be released after serving only 6 years. He killed a 24-year-old trans woman in the Philippines. Lance Pemberton was 20 when he met Jennifer Loud at a nightclub and took her to a hotel room where he choked her and broke her neck. He used a trans panic defense, stating that he didn't know she was transgender when he brought her to the hotel. So, do you have anything to add to that, Ian?
Oh, just the gory details, which I'll spare you.
Yeah, really.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know. So we're going to have another segment, right? So I'll
Yes.
just wait because I have a long thing and I have a clip later. So, Ann, sorry. I don't know where I am.
Almost jumped right over
I
you.
know.
Well, I want to.
And I'm waiting to hear about Thursday.
I want to turn to some penguins. I think it's time for some penguins. I mean, I already showed you a picture of Electra and Viola, but let's see them again. They've become parents to a newly hatched chick at one of Europe's largest aquariums. They're called penguin supermoms by the establishment. They incubated and raised an egg from another couple at the Oceanographica Valencia in Valencia, Spain, according to a statement on the aquarium's website. They are one of the aquarium's 3 Gen 2 penguin couples to welcome a chick during the current breeding season. So they're apparently 2 heterosexual Gen 2 penguins also giving birth or welcoming a chick. Although same-sex couples are common in more than 450 species in both zoos and natures, it's the first time this has happened in our aquarium, Oceanographic Valencia stated on its Facebook page. Welcome to the world, little one. It all began when penguin caregivers noticed the pair showing signs that they were ready to reproduce, like constructing a nest out of pebbles. After observing this behavior, the aquarium decided to give the couple a fertile egg to raise. Now, I have more information here. A Sea Life Aquarium, at Sea Life Aquarium London, longtime duo Rocky and Marama, and Rocky...
We remember those.
No.
These
That was
are new
Sven,
ones?
That was Sven and
Sven?
Magic.
Yeah.
This is Rocky and Marama. And Rocky is a female penguin. I was thinking maybe he might be a little butch. Anyway, the longtime duo Rocky and Marama made headlines last July after adopting a chick. And the moms made news again in September when their baby became the first genderless penguin chick.
Wow.
And just one more penguin note. In September 2018, 2 male penguins at the Denmark Zoo nabbed a chick while its mother was swimming, and the zoo staff returned the little one to its biological parents soon after, but took heed of the couple's nurturing effect and found an egg for them to raise. But let's go back, if we may, to the Sea Life London Aquarium, first Gen 2 penguin, not to have a gender assigned at birth. I think this is very interesting.
Yeah.
So Rocky and Marama made the headlines after adopting the chick, and now the longtime duo is making history by parenting by what may be the world's first genderless penguin chick. This chick is 4 months old, has yet to be named. Will it be the first of its kind in history of the famous London Aquarium not to be characterized as male or female? While the decision may ruffle a few feathers, get it?
Yeah.
Gender neutrality in humans has only recently become a widespread topic of conversation, said Graham McGrath, the aquarium's general manager. However, it's completely natural for penguins to develop genderless identities as they grow into mature adults. Despite this, however, newborn penguins are routinely given gendered names and colored tags at Sea Life, until now. The adopted chick of Rocky and Marama has been tagged with a gender-neutral purple band for identification purposes. As for why this particular chick was chosen to be the aquarium's first genderless one, Sea Life noted, that this chick captured the aquarist team and guests' imagination after it was successfully adopted by 2 female penguins. I don't know if they were super moms like Viola and Electra. This was the first time we had successfully adopted a chick onto a same-sex couple, and to mark the parenting achievements of Rocky and Marama in helping to develop the chick into a happy and healthy penguin, Sea Life wrote in a statement. It made sense to continue to allow it to be identified more naturally by staff and guests at the aquarium and in the future. Now, since Linda mentioned Sven and Magic,
Yeah.
they are also legendary same-sex penguin parents, and they adopted their chick last October, and I reported at length about it. So we won't continue along that vein. So I think genderless chicks should be the wave of the future,
Yeah.
with purple
Wristbands,
armband,
yeah.
wristbands,
Yeah.
leg bands. So that's my news. That's my segment.
So now I'm going to bore you with the legislature.
Okay.
Nothing about us without us. Apparently, our legislature heard it when our Indigenous and people of color community said, "You're enacting all of this legislation and you haven't heard from us. This legislation is supposed to be in response to the issues of racial inequity. Why are you not hearing our voices?" So our legislature has slowed the process down, and what's now lovingly referred to as IPOC, the Indigenous People of Colors communities, they are creating forums in which for them to come in and tell their stories.
Good.
And say, if you are to do something, this is what would have meaning and an impact based upon the experiences we're having here in Vermont. Now, talking about the experience in Vermont, we like to think that.
Well, what if somebody has a story they want to tell? How do they, is it going to be advertised, or do you?
Well, it would be the same as any legislative hearing. If
They put
you
the word
wanted
out.
to give your story, you have to get in touch with the clerk of the committee for which the hearings are being held, and you can go on to the legislative website, and there is a list that says weekly committee agendas.
Okay.
And it gives you both the House and the Senate, and you can click on it and it will take you to the committee assignments. So
Okay.
you know the representatives and the senators, and then who the contact clerk is, and the bill that's being discussed, and who already is being scheduled to testify. But it is actually very timely looking at what's happening around the state. In Bennington, reading the story about how they were painting Black Lives Matters on their street, and there were counter demonstrators who came and stood in the middle of the street so they could not paint. And the recent story about my dear friend Tabitha Moore in Rutland County, who's the head of the NAACP, that she is a woman of color. She grew up in Vermont, in the Rutland area, and she's saying that she is having to move based upon the response to her standing up and giving voice to racial inequity in the
Wow.
state. So we are not immune,
No.
and then looking at the demonstrations that are ongoing in Burlington and how they have not been able to sort of resolve, those conflicts and those issues.
Because they want 2 policemen fired.
Three.
Three.
But and that gets into a difficult conversation because those incidents occurred over a year ago. An investigation and disciplinary action had already happened. So according to labor law, those issues had already been fully investigated and resolved.
However, there's a counterpoint, of course, about the policing itself, and whether or not that's possible to produce a just outcome.
Well, and a lot of that happens on a municipal basis. You need to look at what your municipality does for oversight of its law enforcement. And traditionally what happens with law enforcement is you don't investigate yourself, but you're correct in you would bring in someone from an outside law enforcement agency to investigate what your department had done. And
Right.
does that constitute a conflict? And should there be a totally independent, such as the Human Rights Commission, that would investigate it? So when we come back around, I'm going to talk about the elections and which of our incumbent LGBTQ plus legislators are facing opposition and who might not be.
Uh-huh.
So, I know.
All right.
Cliffhanger.
It is. So I was just going to talk a little bit about the granddaughter of late evangelical Christian leader Billy Graham in accusing church leaders of spitting on his memory with their continued support of President Trump.
So is this?
This is one of them. The other one is pro-Trump. This one is anti-Trump.
Yeah, okay.
I have spent my entire life in the church with every big decision guided by my faith, but now I feel homeless. Jerusha, I think Jerushah, Jerhassan Duford wrote in an op-ed for USA Today, like so many others, I feel disoriented as I watch the church I have always served turn their eyes away from everything it teaches. I hear from Christian women on a daily basis who all describe the same thing, a tug at their spirits. She wrote that she often feels that unpleasant tug when listening to Trump's rhetoric, citing his recent comments about the scrapping an Obama-era rule meant to squash segregation and provide low-income housing. So,
Obama-era rule.
yes, Obama era. Jesus said repeatedly to defend the poor and show kindness and compassion to those in need. Our president continues to perpetuate an us versus them narrative, yet almost all of our church leaders say nothing, she wrote. She also wrote that the silence from the church leaders shows that marginalized communities are no longer valued by individuals claiming to uphold the values my grandfather taught. So that was kind of interesting. And there's a lesbian candidate, Ann Johnson, who could help flip the Texas to blue.
Oh, that'd be nice.
I know. And a man went into an LGBTQ bar in Missouri with an AR-15 and 160 rounds, has been sentenced to 46 months in prison. I guess he shot up he was out in the parking lot with a man he walked out with, and the man saw the gun and ran away, and he shot something in the air. He shot his rifle in the air, and the police heard it. They happened to be close by, and they got him. But his parting words were, he said he would have shot up all those faggots if the police hadn't showed up. So he went out to get his gun, and then I have a clip that I'm going to show right after I just say a few words about this. 9 queer people in an RV trying to stop a mass shooting. A new film, Disarm Hate, chronicles the pain and resolve that followed the Pulse massacre. Filmmaker Juliana Brudwick got a vision of 9 queer and trans people from the West Coast traveling in an RV to the nation's capital to join Brudel's gun control rally. So this is about their adventure. It should be very interesting, and here is a clip.
June 12, 2016. Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida, under siege. And when the smoke cleared, 49 people were dead, with many more injured.
I didn't know those 49 people. I didn't know that nightclub, but I felt there was an attack on our entire community.
I have an idea. We're gonna hold a national rally called Disarm Hate.
9 LGBTQ activists team up in Los Angeles to board an RV bound for Jason's Disarm Hate rally in Washington, D.C. To get a full understanding of the issue, the team decides to visit LAX shooting range.
It made me think of cops and robbers. Bang, bang, and just like that, a life can be gone.
Because irresponsible people are given a tool that can take lives.
What is the point of those high-capacity rifles? This guy said that's for stress relief. Like, go on a bike ride, that's what I do, or masturbate.
The RV, I really underestimated.
We want to fight homophobia and transphobia, but we can't fight that on the outside until we address it within our very own community.
I'm not gay enough for y'all, and I'm not straight enough for them.
The toilet was overflowing.
You've driven 1,800 miles in 2 days. How do you feel? What was it like?
Pumped! This is everything you need to organize a national rally.
Here we are. The best way to be an ally sometimes is just to stand with us and just to listen.
She was shot in the head at close range. It's not a pretty picture, but that's the reality of what gun violence is.
Columbine, Orlando, the list goes on and on. Don't let them become yesterday's headlines because it happened again. That's your choice to make.
Disarm Hate. See the film and be part of the movement.
Okay, we'll have to see this. The film is going to be out probably on Netflix or HBO or something. I don't think they've really said where it's coming to yet, but they're still working on it.
I'm just waiting for 9 LGBTQ plus and
I
an
know.
RV together. Nothing good can
They
come of
talked
that.
a lot about the bathroom in the clip.
Okay.
But anyway,
I see.
so
Well, this is my opportunity in this segment to share a review of this memoir called The Fixed Stars, by Molly Wiesenberg. Do you want to hold it up?
okay.
Is Molly someone we know?
No.
Okay.
No, Molly,
Is nobody we know
Okay.
personally.
right, she's a chef. And this is her third memoir. It's called The Fixed Stars. It contains, I should add, this was published on August 11th in the Lambda Literary Review, and I wrote it in March, so I've almost forgotten it. But the publication was delayed because of the pandemic, so here it is, it's come out, and here's the review. Molly Wiesenberg's third memoir, The Fixed Stars, contains many narratives. It's the story of a young woman's childhood in Oklahoma and young adulthood on the West Coast. It's an account of a heterosexual romance culminating in marriage and the birth of a daughter. It's the contemplation of motherhood and the story of a beloved uncle's death from AIDS. It chronicles a coming out and traces the dissolution and reconfiguration of the heterosexual family unit. And it's an exploration of the limits of the born this way ideology that has dominated LGBTQ discourse in recent decades. The action of the memoir follows a clear path. In late spring 2015, while serving jury duty, Molly Wiesenberg discovers an attraction to Nora. She is the second defense attorney, Nora is, a woman clad in a man's suit sporting a lesbian haircut. At the end of the trial, Molly can't stop thinking about the lawyer. She discusses the attraction with Brandon, her husband of almost 10 years, and they agree to open their marriage. Then Molly contacts Nora and quickly discovers that the attraction is reciprocated. Eventually, Molly and Brandon separate and establish a co-parenting plan. After 4 months, the relationship with Nora ends, and Molly soon becomes involved with a non-binary partner named Ash. As the memoir moves forward, Molly reshapes her life in terms of both familial and romantic relationships. Of course, the fixed stars comprises much more than this plot line suggests. Wiesenberg's voracious reading is on striking display throughout. She cites a dazzling array of sources and references spanning a range of cultures and time periods. The notes and bibliography present an added flourish that the bibliophiles among us will appreciate. Wiesenberg's writerly sensibility animates every page. Late in the memoir, she declares, "We are constantly writing the novel of ourselves, inventing more of it on demand to what the world asks of us." Throughout the narrative, the writer employs the instruments of fiction to felicitous effect. The periodic description of literal photographs affords an outsider's glimpse of a moment in time. The short, episodic fragments within each chapter disrupt chronological sequence, quicken pace, and enhance narrative immediacy. But perhaps the most striking literary feature of the memoir concerns the thematic and symbolic use of astronomy that the title anticipates. I learned a lot about astronomy in this memoir from reading it. The theme of the deceptive fixity of the stars is introduced early as Wiesenberg explains that although the stars seem stationary to the naked eye, quote, astronomers know that every star is in motion and that each moves along its own trajectory according to its own properties, close quote. She adds, the constellations we see are temporary human creations, our effort to draw order and meaning from a mostly unknowable universe, to tell ourselves stories, to guide our way home across endless oceans, close quote. Though in this passage, Wiesenberg applies the metaphor to the construct of her heterosexual marriage, its wider implications are clear. Not surprisingly, the astronomical thread is woven throughout the entire book. The chapter titles are enclosed within a 4-star depiction of Orion's belt, a configuration the author likens to the 3 freckles on Nora's collarbone in the Province of Us chapter. The Old Hunter, the concluding chapter, uses the stars to underscore Wiesenberg's assertion that sexuality is fluid and customs and mores change. Constellations we know today will someday be unrecognizable, she observes, and even Orion will eventually change. However informed and talented its author, there are some weaknesses in the memoir. Her argument against the born this way paradigm is often insightful and provocative, yet occasionally slips into generalization. At times, it suggests a tendency toward what psychologist Peter Wasson calls confirmation bias. In addition, Wiesenberg's female and non-binary partners function as secondary characters in a drama whose main focus is the separation and reassembly of participants in a heterosexual marriage. We are only given an account of the sexual incompatibility that causes Nora and Molly's breakup. Although we learn early that Nora is a writer and are given no information about what she writes. Similarly, Ash's top surgery is described, but readers never discover what they do for a living. Fleshing out these female and non-binary characters would certainly have enriched the fixed stars. These caveats notwithstanding, the high quality of the prose, the breadth of intellectual engagement, and the probing honesty of the inquiry render Molly Wiesenberg a writer to follow with interest. One comes away from the fixed stars eagerly anticipating a sequel. And in this future book, if the stars are our guide, even if the broad outlines of Wiesenberg's life seem the same, everything will have changed.
Wow, that's very interesting, Anne.
The end. I did learn a lot about astronomy.
Yeah.
Are you getting a
That sounds-
telescope?
I think not. But I didn't even know what Orion's belt looked like, so I know. I learned many things.
Those of us who were in the Boy Scouts.
Oh, don't.
So that's a whole other show. As soon as I said it, it's like, ooh. So to finish the conversation about the census, here in Vermont, remember I have said that there was great concern because of the undercounting and that it has a direct impact on how much federal funding comes in. And even though we're not being recognized on the federal level, we certainly would be within the Vermont political infrastructure. So once we get the money here, we can have a voice in what happens with it. The current estimate as of September 6th, and this information was just sent out to those of us sitting in the Census Commission today, they think that 59% of Vermonters have already self-reported. Those remunerators, the people going door to door, have picked up another 31%.
Wow.
And we think, and they're estimating there's a little over 30,000 to still be counted before the census period ends. So Vermont is in the middle of the pack now, according to states, and we're looking as though we're going to exceed the reporting from 10 years ago, which means that Vermont could be looking at increased federal funding. So be thinking about LGBTQ plus senior housing.
Yes, I am.
And what we're going to want. The elections, they're coming right up. And what Jim Condos, the Secretary of State, has said is that the last 2 weeks of September, you should be getting your mail-in ballots. All of them should be going out before October 1st. This is what I'm going to tell you with all of that maneuvering that's happening within the postal system. As soon as you get it, read the instructions thoroughly to ensure that you're filling it out correctly, because the ballots that were discounted during the primary were essentially because people forgot to sign the envelope into which they were putting the ballot.
I didn't sign mine, did you? Mm-hmm. Well, maybe we did.
But Taylor said in her interview that people threw away part of it, too.
Well, no, that's what I was going to go to next.
Okay.
Is that one of the other part that happened during the primary is people only returned the ballot they used. You had to return the other two unused in the second envelope, and you needed to sign both of them. So it was read the instructions. So, and all of the political pundits who are talking now are saying none of these races are guaranteed, particularly the governor's race. So your vote really counts. So looking at our LGBTQ plus incumbents, there are two that were not seeking re-election, Deanna Gonzalez in Chittenden 6-7 and Debbie Ingram, Chittenden County Senate. So looking at people that we have interviewed on the show before, Kathleen James, Bennington 4, has no one running against her. Bill Lippert, Chittenden 4-2, does have opposition, and it's somebody that's run against him in previous elections. Brian Chena, Chittenden 6-4, he and his seatmate Celine Coburn have no opposition. Our friend John Kalaki, Chittenden 7-3, has no opposition. Emily Kornhauser, Windsor 2-1, does have opposition. Brian Campion, who is running for Bennington Senate, there is opposition, as there is for Becca Ballant in running for Senate in Windham County. One of the things with Becca that we're going to be watching very closely is the prediction is she will become the first woman and out LGBTQ plus president pro tem of the Vermont
That'd be
Senate.
nice.
So we're going to be watching those closely. Two other races to watch, Chittenden 6-7, Taylor Small.
Observe our shirts.
And in Chittenden 10, Amber Quinn.
Ember.
Oh, I thought it was Amber. I'm sorry. Ember Quinn. Thank you. Have the potential of being our first openly transgender member of the Vermont legislature. And as Taylor said in your interview, they could be the 5th and 6th members of a state legislature on a national basis. So
Yeah.
we're going to be watching closely.
Taylor also mentioned Kaya Morris.
No, Keisha Ram.
Sorry.
It's okay. Keisha Ram, who, looking at numbers, could be the first woman of color to serve in the Vermont Senate.
Right.
So our trivia question. Wow. Catchy title, catchy name. In Vermont, it might have been in Worcester. It might have stood for Women of the Woods, a lesbian social group. And they may have done an annual Always a Bridesmaid. And there are photographs. So with that,
I think we should move on towards the election and always resist.
Resist.